Welcome to TBI Analytics Podcast. I am Amelia Brummel, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing one of my dear friends and colleagues now, Patrick Porter, who is the creator of one of my favorite devices on this planet that everybody in their right mind, or wrong mind, if you will, actually the ones with the wrong minds need it the most, but needs brain tap on their heads. And we are excited today to talk about many different uses of brain tap and how it can help you. But in the field that I am working in with TBI patients, traumatic brain injured people, we're always trying to find those resources for them to help them with their injury and to actually recover. And with brain tap, it can actually help that person, and in more ways than just one. And I am going to let Patrick take over and explain that. So Patrick, how long ago did you discover this product, or this creation, if you will, and explain that to us?
Well, parts of it were actually from my childhood. My dad was a Silva instructor, and they had something called the Silva sound. So our brain is actually always monitoring our environment and making changes to frequencies. So brain frequencies we need to connect with really close to the brain. They call them EEG. So we now know that we can change those frequencies based on our environment. Like we can present music, for instance, as one way people change their environment, right? They put music on, they get more energy, they might feel good or bad, but the music can change the mood. You could imagine your favorite movie, but you don't have a soundtrack. There'd be a big difference. So we have 5 primary brain waves. And in the 80s, actually, in 1986, I worked for a company in Scottsdale, Arizona called Light and Sound Research. And the 6 of us got together. There was a bigger machine, a clinical unit, and we were trying to recreate it. Now, this was before CDs and before downloads and before mobile phones even. I mean, there were some mobile phones, but they were bricks. You carried around in suitcases.
Right.
But so when we were creating it, there was a store called Radio Shack, and we started playing around with things, and we were looking at what does a candle do? When a lot of people will burn candles, like they'll take a bath and they'll burn a candle, they'll feel relaxed. They don't realize that what's happening is the science is called frequency following response. So that candle is flickering at 10 hertz frequency. So while we're sitting here, hopefully we're not too deep into our sleeping brain. Let's say, there's a brain wave called beta, which is your wide awake brain, that we need to drive a car, make decisions. That can also go out of control with anxiety, stress, and confusion. And especially in the case of TBI, if different regions of the brain get damaged, these brain waves cannot be created. And the one that we typically see, and that's why a lot of times with TBI they get angry and upset, because the regions of the brain, when we try to get a memory, it's actually stored in 10 to 12 places in the brain, not just one. So if there's a damaged area, it's almost like you're trying to get down the highway, but they've got it construction. So the body's making repairs, and it can't get that memory. So what we did is we used light. And so nobody had been using light before that. We were the first company to ever create a light and sound machine. That's what we used to call them. We don't call them light and sound machines anymore because we use more than that. But what we're doing is we're just training the body to relax. When you're in a relaxed state, the body gets into a state of parasympathetic, which is rest, relax, digest, recover. And the problem when you're injured is that your body goes into sympathetic drive. It wants to, we want to sleep, but because we're Americans and we want to achieve everything, we drink coffee and eat chocolate and sugar, and we just keep.
And we want everything instantly.
Yeah, we're the instant reality people. If we want something, we want it now. But really, what our brain is saying is we want to slow everything down and heal. And when I was in practice as a psychologist, I was always looking for ways to help people get out of pain. And most people don't know this, unless you're a neuroscientist, is that pain only happens in the brain. Correct. It doesn't happen in the body. So with TBI, in fact, the brain itself doesn't even process pain. It's the external environment that's damaged, like maybe you have a burn on your finger or a cut or broken leg. That signal gets sent to the brain. Now, if you can have phantom pain. So we were working with people, and think about it in the 80s, there was no opioids. The opioids haven't come out yet. So we're trying to figure out how can we train people through biofeedback, not neurofeedback. A lot of people know about neurofeedback, and it's a good thing, but our brain doesn't learn that way. I've never seen a neurofeedback study that actually showed after somebody was done doing their 40 sessions, that they continued to go on getting better. While they're doing it, it's good. It's like going to the gym. As long as you go to the gym, you're building muscles. But as soon as you stop going to your personal trainer, you atrophy and you go back to where you were. What we wanted to find out was what could we do to teach people, because it's something you got to do daily. It's not something you just do once. There's a saying a good friend of mine, Rod Hairston, said, he's from Austin, he says, there is no there. You're not finished. So especially when you get a damage, like a TBI or something like this, you're going to have to do something. Now, the problem is, what did you do up to the point where you got the TBI?
Right.
How compromised were you already?
Right.
When you're younger and you can recover because you have a lot of stem cells and your body is functioning at a high level, you can overcome those things. You can be in a car accident, you don't think anything happened, and 3 days later you're getting headaches and backaches. You don't know what happened, and they might not even correlate it to the accident. They go, oh, that's something different. But the reality is that the damage was there, but you were able to recover quickly, but it might come back 20 years later. So the nice thing about the brain is we were looking, when you downregulate the brain, get into that alpha state like I was saying, that's why we used a candle or into a state called theta, which is, most people out there listening have been in theta. It's in the morning, if you've ever woke up and there was a music playing somewhere in the house and that music got in your head, they call them earwigs. So this song just keeps playing in your head. You can't get rid of it until you go to sleep that night and you wake up. Well, imagine that they call that hypermnesia, or super memory. So you heard this song and it was impressed on you and it stayed with you all day, but it wasn't important, so you forgot it the next day. But that brainwave state was the same brainwave state you were in when you were a kid. Imagine you just arrived on the planet, you're born, you know nothing, right? So you're observing and absorbing the whole world. You're not in a beta state. You're not even in alpha. You're in theta.
Because you're not anticipating anything.
Right. You're just absorbing the world.
Right.
And until up to about 7 years old, then you'll start to develop more of an alpha brain. Now, if you don't develop alpha brain, for those listening that have ever seen an autistic child, we have found that the autistic child has less than 5% of their brain in alpha. And we did a study here in California with Joe Quita Handy, and we found that once we trained them for 30 days and got their alpha brainwave up to 23%, 90% of them started speaking with no speech training. Because think of your brainwaves like Wi-Fi networks. You've probably been in an office at some point and they said, the internet's down. The internet wasn't down. Our connection to the internet was down. So think of your brain. You have a traumatic brain injury. Your brain's not down. Your mind, I should say, because the brain's the hardware, the mind's the software. Your mind's still there, but you don't have access to it because you've damaged that region of the brain. The nice thing is that if you do the right thing, you can heal that part of your brain, because our brain is designed to heal. It's not designed to stay sick. In fact, the brain is like the liver. It will regenerate itself at any age. So I don't care when you got we have a case study that we did with veterans where a person had a hematoma or a bruise, if you will, like you get a bruise on your leg, it goes away. And then, but in the brain, it doesn't go anywhere because people aren't sleeping. So the first thing we work on with TBIs, and the reason we were doing it was when you're in pain, you don't sleep, and then it exacerbates the problem, right? You go, oh, I just need to sleep to do it, but you can't sleep because you're in pain.
Yeah.
So we were thinking, how could we do that? So neurofeedback.
And I've heard you say you can't take a pill for sleep.
Right, that's right. Well, all the studies with sleeping pills.
Right.
Less than 30 seconds of real sleep.
Wow. When you're on a sleeping pill.
Right. It doesn't matter time in bed. Since you're bringing this up, we should tell the audience.
Let's do that.
So we did a research project in Australia with coal miners.
Okay.
These are people that go to work in the dark, they work in the dark, they leave in the dark, they never see the light of the sun. So there's something called the circadian rhythm, which means that we're tied to the cycle of the sun. So we should wake up in the morning, we should go to bed at night. That's why shift workers, like third shift workers, late night workers, they have more cancer because they're working out of phase with the circadian rhythm, or at least that's the theory.
Interesting.
And,
that's a good theory.
So with these coal miners, we went there and we did a 2-week what we call baseline evaluation. So for 2 weeks we measured their sleep without doing any intervention. We just wanted them to wear these scintigraphy watches. It told us when they went to sleep, when they woke up. The average coal miner was in bed for 10 hours, but their deep sleep was only 1 minute.
What?
So what we know now through sleep science is we need at least 1 hour of deep sleep. In 2015, in American Scientific, they came out with an article that said they found something new in the human body. So if somebody's thinking we found everything out about the universe, There could possibly not be nothing else in our body we could invent or find out about. In 2015, they found out we had a part of the body called the glial lymphatic system. This is the lymphatic system of the brain. Think of it like the cleaning system, like the garbage man. In fact, that's how in the article, they talked about the garbage system of the brain. So, but if you don't get to level 4 sleep, you never detox. So that hematoma I was talking about, it stayed in there because there was no place for it to go. There was no blood flow, there was no circulation. Everywhere you have a blood vessel, you have a lymphatic vessel. But if you can go back in time and look at any physiology book on the planet before 2015, it stops at the neck. Now that's changed with a little asterisk that says during level 4 sleep, it activates a system of the brain that we didn't even know existed before 2015. So we're not anywhere near knowing what we are, what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
So what we did is we said, it's not time in bed. So if you've been told by your doctor to get 8 hours of sleep, that's hogwash. Studies show the best for longevity in life and productivity, 6.5 hours.
Ooh, I'm doing good.
Yeah. But you have to have quality sleep. 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep, because that REM sleep is what's going to compartmentalize, organize, and during the day, your brain, what it's doing, it's collecting all this data, and then when you go to sleep, it sorts it all out, so you can use it later. So it becomes knowledge. There's a saying, knowledge isn't power, it's knowledge applied. But if you're stressed all the time, you never get to apply that knowledge. You never get to compartmentalize it, because when you're being chased by a tiger, you don't worry about, So that's why what we were doing with at the Light and Sound Research was we were teaching them biofeedback techniques. So in biofeedback, different than neurofeedback, because we didn't have neurofeedback then. Some people ask me, did you go to college for neuroanatomy? I wasn't a medical doctor, so that wasn't it. I'm a psychologist. So we didn't have it at all. But what we know now is with all the devices, sleep aids, and like Whoop watches and Oura rings and things like that, people can measure their sleep. And as long as you get that 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep, even if you only get 3 hours sleep, and those were the 3 hours, you will have energy.
Wow.
Because we collect energy. Virginia Hunt, who used to be a professor at UCLA here, she did a lot of studies on what they call the biofield. And this might sound spooky to some people because they might be in the medical world and they haven't looked at the NIH website. But our National Institute of Health actually says that we have a biofield. And they now recognize that illness starts in the field. So think of it like we have this electrical
magnetic field.
And our heart actually produces a field around us up to 18 feet, maybe more. They say 18 feet, but there might be people that have it bigger, maybe smaller. But that is actually broadcasting information to our cells in the form of light. So when you think about, we didn't know we were doing this back in the 80s. Nobody knew this, but now we know there's a lot of light therapy out there, especially for TBIs. You can use biophotic energy helmets and light pads and nasal, just to get light energy into the brain. And we didn't realize that was all going to be a side benefit. We were doing it basically to get them out of pain, because
get them sleeping again.
Yeah, get them sleeping, get them out of pain. And that was our total motivation. We didn't even know it would do all the things it does now.
Wow.
So over the years, like in my first book, Awaken the Genius, we talked about how when you start activating the 2 hemispheres of the brain, you become smarter. There's a whole science out there for, if people out there want to research, it's called the Mozart effect. And what they say is if you listen to Mozart music, you're actually smarter. And all the research shows it. It's because the 2 hemispheres communicate. Think about it. You have a 100 billion neurobit processor. What it can do for you is no small thing. You just have to figure out what you want it to do and focus on that. But the problem is if you instruct it negatively, and this is a problem sometimes with traumatic brain injuries, is that you start to get low energy. So when you think about low energy, you crave low energy foods, like sugars and sweets. And it's so important at that time that you raise your energy. The best thing you can do for longevity, they've proven, is be positive. It actually adds 10 years to your life. So the statistics show. So when you get a negative thought, you have to, in Silva, which was one of the techniques my dad taught us, it's a meditation technique, you'd say cancel, cancel, and you replace it with something positive.
Okay.
So you got to catch yourself.
Yes.
But when you have an injury, it's very common. You just feel down. You don't have.
It's hard to get yourself out of that.
Right.
You're already in it.
So that's why when we created the first Light and Sound machine, it was called the MC Square, because we were talking about how energy and mass, creates consciousness. So in the process, so it's about energy. When you have a damaged brain, we can measure that now. with something called EEG, we use a WAVI device, which is out of Boulder, Colorado, which is very easy to use if there's doctors out there. And it's great for diagnosing TBIs. And they have a database of people. When they do the scan, it all goes up into the cloud, and all these doctors get to correlate their data. And the interesting part about that, I didn't know our doctors were doing that. We have 5,000 clinics out there. So we had about 200 of our clinics using the WAVI. And the WAVI company called me, and I didn't even know we worked on TBIs or concussions, right? That wasn't our focus. And because we're a wellness device, we're not a medical device, right?
Sure.
So the owners at WAVI called me up and they said, what are you doing over there at BrainTap? And I said, what do you mean? They go, well, we correlate all the doctors' data, and they're all doing the same thing, but these 200 doctors are getting results over 100% faster than others. And they said the only thing they're doing differently than the other centers is using BrainTap. So when
I believe it.
Yeah. So when we did our study in Michigan, we did a full high school, Gaylord, Michigan. Ted Arkerfeld did the study, and we showed that if you use BrainTap during recovery time, you get between 30 and 70% neurological improvement 1 year later. That's a 1 year washout. So when I was talking about neurofeedback, I couldn't find any study that showed that. We're now showing a year later, 2 years later, 6 months later, like with our dementia study. It's not really related to TBIs, but the dementia study, the brain profile is pretty much like a TBI victim.
Right.
They have lack of blood flow, circulation. Maybe it wasn't done by an injury. It was just from aging or improper diet.
Like you were saying, if you're not up moving around, using your body, getting that active energy, which a lot of people when they get older, don't do that, then that's just
right.
Well,
we should tell the audience that
Yes.
there's 3 things that I think everyone needs to do to better their brain, whether you have a TBI or not.
This.
So number 1, you cannot think of bad diet. So you need to eat healthy, vibrant foods. And if you don't know what those are, just go to Dr. Patrick Porter YouTube and put it in there, and there's free tips and things on there for you to do that. There's a lot of people talks about brain food. You want to eat purple foods, really, not just because we're all wearing purple. But purple has some reason that really helps the brain. And then you want to eliminate sugar for sure. If you have a TBI right now, sugar is off the table because sugar is the death. It kills the brain.
Wow.
And we have a piece of technology called NeuroCheck, and we can show people that if you have a candy bar, you have a drink of alcohol, you just got to be ready that your brain is going to get crushed. Now, it's okay if that's what you want to do. You're out and you want to have a glass of wine or something like that, but you want to have it with your meal, and you want to make sure you're maybe having some cheese. That's why there was cheese in wine, because the cheese has protein in it. It's going to slow down the sugar so that your body can metabolize and digest it so you can enjoy. Now, of course, when you're younger, you're not drinking for that reason. You're trying to get as much alcohol in as possible. But the reality is if you're just doing it to have a good time.
Yeah.
But so diet is important. You can't outthink a bad diet. Number 2, you got to get up and move and breathe. And there's a piece of technology that our company's actually invested in. It's called 60 Up. And it actually will rewire the brain through exercise. And it's proven that Dan Metcalf created this technology. You might remember Bob Eubanks from the Newlywed Game. He's one of his spokespeople because Bob couldn't even golf. He couldn't hardly walk. He was shuffling around. And after 3 weeks of doing this exercise, and it's an exercise, it's not very expensive. It's less than $500. You can have it in your home. I have one in my home, and I have it out at my cottage. I have it at my clinic. And you just do 5 or 10 minutes a day on it, and it'll rewire the brain. And he's got all these little exercises because when we were kids, we crawled on the floor. We like martial arts or danced or something. Some way we got our nervous system going. And unfortunately, 20 minutes of sitting is equivalent to smoking a cigarette. So when you have a traumatic brain injury, it's even if you just get out and just walk, just start walking, you're gonna get something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factors, and that's going to heal the brain faster. So eating right, exercise, and then where we come in is called brain fitness.
Okay.
Because before this, everybody thinks, hey, if I do crossword puzzles or I do put together puzzles themselves and all that, those are all good for your brain, but they stress your brain out. So even exercise, the reason that we're like with TBRX, Tom Brady's group, is Tom has a saying in his recovery system, every minute of exertion needs 2 hours of recovery.
Wow.
So when we did the study with the kids, all we did differently was at the end of their therapy, they did a 20-minute relaxation session with the BrainTap. That's all we did. We didn't tell them what it was about. We didn't tell them what it was going to do.
Wow.
Just half of them got that, The other half didn't. So the days, like the Mondays and Wednesdays when those kids came in, they did the brain tap. When the others didn't even know it was happening. So because we had to keep it kind of a secret what was going on, and they didn't know what the other people were doing.
Right.
So but the brain, we need light energy. So when the eyes are closed, we're using lights to the eyes and the ears, and that light is actually pulsing at a certain frequency. And there's something in the brain called mirror neurons. These mirror neurons, just like if anybody out there has done sports, most people doing sports, if you see somebody else do it, and then you can imitate it. I like what Queen Elizabeth said, we learn like monkeys from their parents, because we're imitating them, right? And if you've ever babysat or like I have grandkids now, so I always find out what mom and dad's doing because when they were younger, they would pretend they were them. You'd see them fighting or doing whatever, so because we're going to imitate those people. That's the mirror neurons. Like when you're imagining your Mario Andretti or your whoever, Barbie or whatever you want to be, you're using your imagination, but you're engaging that part of the brain that uses the mirror neurons. So when and that's happening all the time. We can affect our internal environment based on our external environment. So especially when you have a damaged brain because of an injury, your body is now putting all its resources into healing. So you don't have all the other resources you used to have. So that's why it's super important you have that downtime and you do some kind of brain recovery. Now, if it's not brain tap, of course, I'm going to recommend brain tap, but if you can't afford that, there is some breathwork exercises, and maybe later in the show we can tell them some tips where they can do that on their own.
Yeah, for sure. And, that's what you were saying, how some people think they have to do a crossword puzzle or something that activates the brain. But really what brain tap is doing and what I call is meditation on steroids, if you will. And most people don't know how to meditate. In fact, people don't even know what to do when it comes to meditating. They think they got to sit there with, fingers in the cross position and, get to, zero, no noise, no nothing. But that's actually, yes, we want to do that, but where you're shutting the brain off in a sense completely, where you don't have anything, thoughts coming in or anything. And so what Brain Tap, I know, helped me when I didn't know anything about what Brain Tap did. I just saw it on somebody and I saw that it was working and that's all I knew. And I thought, I'm just going to try this. And that's what it felt like for me was I had started working on learning different ways of meditating, and I was using a mobile fan and just using a noise from that or white noise, and then trying to just stay on that and not having a thought within a minute of just listening to that. And then I would build on that. And when I'd walk away from that even 10-minute meditation of thinking of nothing or just breath work, I walked away with just like more space in my brain. It felt like it just,
I tell people what's coming at you. The world is coming at you so fast.
Yes.
And what it'll do is it'll kind of stuff it. Eventually, you're going to have to deal with that stuff.
Yes.
Or it's going to implode. Right? There's something in the brain they call the default mode network. So think of it like your subconscious. You have this, when you're not thinking, in fact, they say 25% of the time you're unconscious.
Yes. Tell us more. Like you were saying, we operate off of our subconscious.
Yes. Well, Bruce Lipton, who wrote the book Biology of Belief, which I recommend if this has inspired you, that's a great book to go read besides my books. I mean, it's the one we had every therapist that worked for me. And he's a great guy. We bring him out to Quantum University all the time. He became a bit of a friend, as much as you can, just seeing somebody at conferences and things. But his books are fantastic. And what he showed years before anybody else was talking about it, he said 95% of your world is controlled by your subconscious. What that means is you're too busy being busy. So many people spend all their time on their conscious mind. And I tell people, that's like talking to the front desk at your doctor. But the doctor's in the back. You got to get to the doctor to talk. That's your subconscious. That's the one that's running the show. Who's beating your heart right now? 86,000 times a day it's beating. Your eyelids will blink 20,000 times a day. You're going to salivate. You're going to digest your food. You're doing literally trillions of things right now that you have no idea what's going on, and you don't control them at all.
Right.
But your subconscious does. In your conscious mind, you're too busy being you to take over another project, like change your life or do something different. So that's why when you get into those Zen moments like you're talking about, and what we found, unfortunately, and we've scanned over 30,000 brains in the last 10 years, we've only found a handful of people that could meditate. They think they're meditating.
Right, but they're
But when we really scan them when they're meditating, their default mode network doesn't go offline. Now, if you get in groups like, some people might be going, I do all the time, or if you go to like an event like a Joe Dispenza event or something like that, when you're in the field, all these other people are meditating. Like when my dad used to do the Silva seminars, you get sucked into the energy. It's kind of like being at a ball game, and maybe you didn't really want to be there, but then the team starts winning, and you start getting into it. Yeah. So when you're there, you can't help but get into it. But when you're by yourself, a lot of people, what we'd see happening is they would close their eyes, and their brain would go crazy. Now, a lot of people call that the monkey mind, but really it's all that stuff they never dealt with. So maybe for the first couple of weeks, if you're doing that, you'll get through that. What we've done with Brain Tap is you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
That's why you said, like on steroids, we tell people just press play.
Just push play.
And
you
the
can
brain,
fall asleep and it'll still work.
Yeah. And we used to, one of the funniest things I used to do back 15 years ago was I would have an EEG machine on somebody, put them on, it wasn't the Brain Tap at the time, it was called Pathfinder, but we'd put it up on the screen, and I would tell them where the doctor who I was scanning, where their brain was going to be at any moment in time. And they go, how did you know that? I said, well, I wrote the algorithm, and your brain will follow it. Our brain learns not consciously. That's why neurofeedback isn't that effective. Now, there's some neurofeedback now that's coming out that uses frequency response that is really showing promise, and it's more frequency response based. It's not you moving a sailboat or making a movie run without blurring. Those are good things to do, and it's great to show people you have a powerful mind, but it's not going to change it. It only works while you're doing it. So what we want to do is, and it's not affordable. Like you have to pay $5,000 to $8,000 to go do 40 sessions of neurofeedback. Now that's great to show you, but what are you going to do at home?
What are you going to do about it?
So one of our goals was, how can we create a device that's affordable to the masses? And even without the device, you can use it with just the app. So for as little as $30 a month, $1 a day, your whole family can be getting mental health issues resolved.
The best that you can get because you're doing this without having to take time out of your day.
Right.
Literally before I go to sleep at night, I put this thing on my head and I hit play. And over how many thousands?
We have over 2,400 sessions now.
Wow. So, and multiple areas, multiple categories. So I know we're focused on traumatic brain injury. We've talked about dementia, but they cover, you name it. I'm on the business and finance one, and there's entrepreneur sessions. And then if you just want to sleep better, there's more sleep out. I mean, it's the whole gamut of things that people just need as a human in this world to get better at. And going along those lines of shutting that brain down, people think, well, I can't take time to just do nothing. But it's amazing how when you come out of one of these brain tap sessions, now you have that focused brain and energy to have the downloaded thoughts or to heal that part of the body, right?
Yeah, and we have an answer for that now too, because that's one of the questions we get over the last 37 years is, I can't just do nothing.
Right.
Well, it's virtually impossible for you to do nothing. There's literally trillions of things going on, a lot of neurological activity. But what we did is we did a study with Julia Arndt, who's a peak performance expert, and she was a burnout at Google. And programmers, because they don't, when people hear about working at Google, oh, I'm running on slides, I get to drink all the wine I want, I get the kitchen. But when you walk away from the desk, they're counting every keystroke. It's a very stressful environment.
Yes.
So we took the 1%ers and we did an evaluation with them. And what we found was we had them do the PONS test, which is a evaluation scoring for depression. They were all 70%. They were only, on a scale from 0 to 100, they were at 30. Anything below 60 is depression.
Oh, my.
So they were clinically depressed. If they were going to a psychologist, somebody who would prescribe drugs, they would have got it. But I'm not saying to take drugs. If you're on them, don't get off them either. Go to your doctor. But the reality is that SSRIs, which are the serotonin uptake inhibitors, they were only approved for 14 days of use.
Wow.
So I don't know about you, but I don't know very many people that take them for
Just
14 days.
And
right? And then because the doctor says they'll work at 28 days. Wow. So they don't even work in the time that they've been prescribed.
Wow.
And if they were put out today, there's a book called Suggestible You. They proved that they wouldn't even pass the placebo test.
Oh, my.
Because now the placebo is up to 40%. So your mind is doing it anyway. So
More than the drugs.
So if you're not on the drugs, try something else first.
Sure.
But if you have to, and I'm not saying get off them,
Right.
because there's a place for everything. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's a place for everyone. You know,
Right.
like, when you only have one solution, you know, you have a hammer and everybody's a nail. You know, and that's not true. And just because you saw a TV commercial and it inspired you because they said you breathe and you have two legs and you should go tell your doctor you need this prescription, I'm not big on that. But I do believe there's a place for it. I wouldn't want to replace our medical system. It's
And we've seen in just a traumatic brain injury that it's not a cookie cutter injury, and everybody's wired differently. And so I would imagine that's just in general. Everybody operates differently, but to have multiple modalities to get you there, great. This is one of them. That's amazing, especially without having to take the chemical synthetic drugs.
Yeah, I mean, your body and brain, think of them together, they're designed to heal. They do it every day. Your cells are changing right now at a rate of 50 million cells per second.
Wow.
You're changing anyway. Your DNA, this is something that's just new out there. So people thought they mapped the human genome. They only map 1%. In 2018, though, they found out that 99 they said were junk, it's changing every 40 seconds. So based on your environment, based on everything, you're changing your DNA representation. They call it epigenetics. So if you want to, and they know that being positive, something called psychoimmunology, the more positive a person is, the better their immune system works. And right now, immune function is down because fear is killing people. We are magically made. Our brain and body are designed to heal, but we have to, again, get the right nutrition. We've got to get the, movement. We've got to think right. And it's hard to do that on your own. So what we want to do, and when I was seeing, especially my clients, they couldn't relax. They're in pain. They couldn't relax. They couldn't sleep. Sleep is when you incubate your superpowers. So 2/3 of the world right now is not sleeping. So if you're watching this and it's not you, it's somebody you know, those SOBs are sleeping and you're not, you can start sleeping because sleep is a learned thing. We didn't have to learn it when we were kids. We just slept. But as we age, we trained ourselves out of it. And there was a time I had trained myself when I was younger, and my dad had to train me because I had anxiety and stress, because I was an artist, and then I didn't do well in school.
Right.
And then I had to learn how to become good at school.
Yeah.
And I believe any kid can do that.
Yep.
That's why I wrote the book Awaken the Genius, because I was told I was learning disabled, and I was in these small groups, and I had this special reading. And basically, they were retarding my education. They weren't helping me.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were doing what they thought was right, but the reality was you need stress to learn, grow, and develop. And you don't need to put somebody behind or label them. You just need to find out how to motivate them to learn. And how my dad did it was he taught me to do the Silva method, which was using what they call the Silva sound, which is a sound that uses frequency following response to put your brain into a state of alpha. When you're in alpha and theta, you're just smarter.
Yes.
And I didn't know that, but my dad taught me to do that. Then I would sit in class and I would stay in what they called the Silva state, or what they call going to level. When you go to level, you absorb more. The kids that learn in school are curious, right? Adult learners are curious. Anybody who's watching this that went back to school after high school, like my dad, one of my favorite stories was he went back to school after he became alcohol free, and he got all A's his first year, and so he's all cocky. He goes into his second year, and a professor comes in and says, nobody gets an A in my class. We've all had that professor, right, that says, nobody gets an A in this class. So my dad raises his hand. He's a pretty gruff guy, and he says, how can I help you? He says, does that mean you're not capable of teaching an A?
Oh.
And he looked at him, he says, if you're capable of teaching an A, I'm capable of getting one.
Oh, that's good.
And my dad changed his whole philosophy because the teacher's grades are the student's grades.
Right.
Why are the
It's
teachers trying to be?
reflection of the teacher.
And I still remember my son when we went to high school. He had one teacher in his religion class that was failing everybody, and in front of all the other teachers and students, I asked him. I said, "How does it feel to know you're a failure?"
Right.
He says, "What do you mean I'm a failure? The kids aren't passing." I said, "That's your grade."
That's exactly.
If the kids didn't learn, the teacher didn't teach.
Yeah.
It's not if the kids are stupid.
It measures the
I said it'd be different if everybody was doing great, but one kid wasn't. Then you'd say, okay, that kid has a problem. But if everyone's failing, that's a teacher problem. So in our schools are all screwed up like that because what are we doing? We're not teaching them how to think anymore.
No.
We're teaching them how to memorize and how to take tests.
Told what to think.
And told what to think. So as we get older, we realize we have to learn to think for ourselves. I'm not saying there's not a lot of good information out there, and there's a lot of people to mentor. But right now, everyone's looking for a solution outside themselves. And the reality is that our body is designed to heal, our brain's designed to heal, and there's going to be recovery, and it's a struggle. And I can't wave a magic wand and take it away, but what we can do is we can have sessions in the morning that wake up your brain, and there's a brainwave called SMR, especially for traumatic brain injury. We can measure this. It's the one for cognition, the one that moves across the hippocampus. Yes, and because it's the hippocampus that runs it. Yes. And so if that part of the brain is damaged, which is a pretty big area of the brain, you're not going to get your memories. Right. So you're going to struggle with it, and then you're going to get angry and upset because
resentful and all of that.
Yeah, but if you can just be patient, let your body heal, relax, get blood flow and circulation, get sleeping again. Sleep makes so much of a difference. So if you can start sleeping again, your body will heal all night long. You wake up, you just every day a little bit better, a little bit better. Pretty soon you'll go, wow, what happened? You can overcome any brain injury if you get nutrition into the brain, right? You get blood flow, circulation. And that's what light does. Most people don't realize, they go, why do you have lights in the eyes and the ears? What's that doing?
Because it lights up the cell, right? With the mitochondria?
Yep. Every cell has something they call a chromophore. It's like a little battery. And then they have the mitochondria. So it's going to absorb that charge, and if that cell has enough energy, it will start to produce more what's called ATP. So think of ATP as the currency of the body. As we age, our cells make less ATP. That's why we heal slower. But what they found is, and I didn't discover this, has been around since the discovery of light therapy. And in fact, in India, they talk about 10,000 years ago called Kronos therapy. If you had a traumatic brain injury back then, they would have you. They actually write about it in the Vedas. They have you get up in the morning 2 hours before sunrise. Now, I don't know how they knew it, but now we know through science that there's more infrared light hitting the planet. That's an 8-10 nanometer light. If you go into your doctor's office and they're using lasers or red light therapy to treat traumatic brain injuries, that's the frequency of light. It comes from our sun. But during the day, it's not so strong. But during the 2 hours before sunrise,
it's really
that's the strongest time.
Wow.
And they write about it in the Vedas, how to deal with these injuries to the brain. And so when you think about it, so we have all this new technology that's doing it, like lasers and brain tap and LED lights that really do heal the brain faster because it creates, in fact, they've now shown that red light therapy will increase ATP production up to 32 times. So it basically feeds the cell what it needs. And that's why I tell people, if they hear me speak, light is the most underprescribed nutrient on earth.
Wow. Wow. So we definitely can bring hope to these people of traumatic brain injury, that there is ways to treat it and actually get them somewhat back to normal again, even?
Oh yeah, I'm a firm believer that as long as you still have brain tissue and you still have cognition, you can heal anything.
Wow.
I mean, the body is designed to heal. It's not brain tap doing it. It's not red light therapy doing it. Your body does it.
Right.
Your body knows what to do if it's given the right
nutrition.
I tell people you can't ask God to build a house and not bring the materials. I mean, if you got to bring the materials to there. Unless you can manifest out of nothing, which in this world we got to eat, right? We got to drink water. We got to, but if you're drinking sodas all day and drinking alcohol at night to overcome the pain, and you're eating Fruit Loops for breakfast and donuts, your body's not going to heal.
What's the fuel that you're throwing into that machine, that temple, if you will?
Yeah.
I look at it like, you get your car serviced and change the oil. Otherwise, it's not going to operate. I mean, that's the simple analogy that we always use, right?
Yeah. No one would put cheap gas in a Maserati.
Right.
Right. But you have a Maserati or, a Lamborghini. Your body this is the most sophisticated piece of equipment ever devised, right?
Your only vessel. Yeah,
right. So, but people would just put junk into it and then complain when it doesn't heal. So, but if you just simple things like we talked earlier about, like eating greens. A lot of people won't eat salads and vegetables anymore, so they have a way to kind of circumvent that. You can buy blue-green algae. And what's nice about blue-green algae, can be available. I like a product called Energy Bits, but because I can travel with them.
Yes.
And you can take a little pouch, and it's like eating a salad. So I'm always making sure I get the greens I need, but they're light activated, and we are light activated. So when we eat them, it actually gives our cells more energy. And that's why greens are so important, like vegetables. And we need the roughage to get the fiber to balance out, because we're stress response. Most people don't realize, like when you're under traumatic brain injury, your liver produces 25 grams of sugar. It's just sitting there, waiting to help you if you get in a situation like a tiger is coming up on you.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, fight or flight. So it pumps it into the bloodstream. Now, if you're just sitting there looking at your phone and you're getting freaked out, or you're watching a scary movie, the body doesn't know that you're not getting chased by a tiger, so it's pumping that sugar into your system. And so that actually is causing problems. It's just like eating a candy bar, but you didn't eat the candy bar. You just had the stressful response.
Interesting. Wow. So no more scary movies.
Right.
Well,
comedy.
Good thing that I don't watch them
right.
anyway.
Comedy is
such a waste of time.
Right. I had a sister growing up. She wouldn't even go to the store by herself, but she loved scary movies. I go, Sarah, what are you doing? She goes, some people are just addicted to that.
Yes,
that fear, and then because they want to feel something. I'm not saying that was Sarah in case she watches this. My sister. but they. Like Stephen King's books are so popular, and they're mostly, he's a great writer. He's done but they're terrible books for you. They're terrible for your psychology.
Yes. You don't want to be going to sleep thinking about that stuff. Yes. And I remember hearing you talk about how we go into theta, right before we fall asleep. And most people, and that's what's programming our brains, right? And that's what people are usually watching the news before they fall asleep, or they have that TV on.
Or if you're watching, most people have the experience where they're watching a war movie, they fall asleep, they're in the war, or whatever movie they're watching, because the last 2 hours of whatever you're doing,
shoot 'em up.
You're going to take that and process that for sleep. Yeah. So I always say the last hour to 2 hours, watch a comedy, do something fun, light, read a book or take a bath, do something that's going to downregulate your nervous system. Walk around your house, turning off lights. Don't have the lights on. And blue light has been a culprit, but the reality is that if we didn't have blue light, we'd all be depressed. Blue light is good for you, but not the light that's on the LEDs and things like that. So get off your screens as much as you can. We have a policy at our house after 8 o'clock at night. We don't look at our cell phones and things like that.
Wow.
And actually, I have mine on Do Not Disturb. And, being on the East Coast, sometimes that's a problem. Because
I know, duly noted, because 8 o'clock for you is 11. Well, it's 5 o'clock for me.
Yeah. But I'll respond in the morning.
I know.
But the thing is that now that we have our little phones with us, our business follows us everywhere.
Yes.
There was a time when I was in business, you locked the door on Friday, you wouldn't hear from anybody till Monday.
Right.
Now that doesn't happen. So if you're in business for yourself and you're dealing with things, and now you don't have any downtime.
Yes.
All these things were supposed to make our life easier.
Yes.
And what they've done is they've made our life more difficult, but nobody's going to get rid of them.
Right.
So let's use the technology to improve ourselves. So that's what we did. Of course, there was no cell phones when we created it. It was like we were Martians. Nobody knew what we were doing. But we were using technology to enhance the way the brain functions. And now we have technology that proves it works. Yeah. We've been using it for years because it down-regulates the nervous system. People know they're relaxing. But now we can measure it. I remember the first EEG machines we used, they're called mind mirrors, and they were just a bank of LEDs that would show what the brain's doing. And it would just amaze people to see how their brain could slow down. Because when you're in that high beta, that reactionary mode, and everyone knows somebody that you can just trigger them, just anything. That's because they're in high beta. That's the reactionary mindset. We need to get them to calm down and interact. That's the alpha theta brainwave, where you kind of interact with people, you're relaxed. You should have a balance of these brainwaves. There's not one that's any more important than others, but if you have too much beta, especially high beta, anxiety and fear, frustration will become your normal, and that's not normal. We need the recovery time. If you're constantly, there's a good book out there by Stephen Covey called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if people haven't read it. And he's got a story of a guy, he walks up on these two guys cutting down a tree. And he says, guys, if you would stop and sharpen that saw, you could cut more trees. No, we're busy cutting down trees. And they didn't get that if they stopped and sawed it. So that study I was talking about, the peak performance study, we showed them that by taking 20-minute break, they actually produced 26% more work.
If they took a break.
If they didn't take a break, that meant they produced, even though they worked longer, they didn't get the enjoyment of the break or anything. The brain needs that break in the middle of the day. These bodies were designed for the Serengeti. Even though we've evolved They haven't. Really, genetically, they haven't changed at all for 200,000 years.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? But our life has changed. I mean,
Right.
we're not out hunting and gathering every day, and we're not doing what they used to do in ancient times, which is what people don't understand is we would meet by the fire at night. And we would talk about our hunting and gathering and war experience. Maybe we'd have dances or whatever. We would do something. And when the fire went out, we didn't go, hey, can you go get another log? I want to binge watch this log.
Right.
There's 5 episodes. I saw 5 more logs. Go get them. We'll watch them burn. No, when that fire burned out, they went to bed. But they didn't know that fire was crackling at 10 hertz frequency.
Right.
It was down-regulating the nervous system.
Yes.
And it also was emitting infrared light by the
Yes.
fire.
That's
so
why you find yourself just meditating on that fire sometimes, right?
yeah.
Just
I
locks you
jokingly
in.
tell people if you've ever been on a romantic getaway, you start a fire and you get lucky, it's because the fire was creating alpha, and alpha creates acetylcholine, which is the kind of fall in love neurotransmitter. So, you're setting the mood. Everybody says the set and setting is
Set
so
the
important,
ambiance,
yeah. So music can do it, the fire can do it. If you do both, it's even better. The more senses you can fill,
Yeah.
and I think that what happens when somebody has a traumatic brain injury, they don't want to challenge their brain too much.
Yes.
But we have to challenge it enough that it heals.
Yes.
So, but we're going to do it in a safe way where you can relax and get that parasympathetic activated. And whatever you can do to do that is healthy.
Yeah.
And now you don't want to do too much of that either. So there's always a balance in everything. There's 3 regulatory systems we talk about with the brain because the brain controls the whole nervous system. And the brain isn't just in your head. So even though you might have a traumatic brain injury up here, you have your heart brain, you have your gut brain. That's why a lot of people with TBIs will have gut problems because the brain biome matches the gut biome and the gut biome matches the brain biome. So, that's why sometimes we have to look at doing even probiotics at the same time and things like that. And they go, why would you do that? Or wear a light pad. Like you might go to your doctor and he'll put a light pad on your gut while you're doing, why are you doing that? My brain's hurting.
Right.
It's because they're connected.
Yeah.
You actually have more neuron connections in your gut than you do up here. So the gut-brain connection, they call it, and it also triggers something called the vagus nerve, which is, they also call it the wandering nerve. It starts in the ear, and we're going to trigger that. That vagus nerve turns on the parasympathetic system. So we're going to use the way the body mechanism works. And it's a mechanism for healing, not a mechanism for hurting them.
Yeah.
Like if you can go out and pass out by drinking a lot of alcohol. That's not the same as doing a meditation, even though the look looks the same,
It's
maybe.
the same, right. You end up in the same position.
Yes.
Absolutely. So going back to if you are a patient of traumatic brain injury or a victim or survivor of it, we just looked at it. There's 147 sessions, I believe.
Yes.
That if we just go through each one of them, by the time that person gets to 147th episode of this brain tap, we might see a whole changed person that's for the better, even probably before they were brain injured.
Yeah.
I
And
would
let's
imagine.
kind of talk to them a little bit about the reason there's 147 because people think it's just one and done.
Right.
If you do the same thing all the time, you create something called neural pruning. We didn't get smarter as our brain didn't wire up when we learned. It actually unplugged to learn. So when we were born, we were totally wired.
Right.
And then what happened is we figured things out. That's why it's so important, like with languages. If somebody speaks more than one language, there's a circuit in the brain for languaging that will not shut off if you learn 2 languages. That's why it's easier for them to learn a 3rd language and a 4th language and a 5th language. But if you only learned 1 language, that part of the brain will downregulate because it takes a lot of energy to keep it going. So why keep the lights on in that room if you're never going to need it again?
Wow.
So once you learned your tribe's language,
Right.
it would shut down. But if you learned, like my science officer, Francisco Cedral, we were in India, and he knows 6 languages.
Wow.
And we were there for 3 weeks. He had never been there before. By the time we were leaving, he was speaking Hindi. And I said, Francisco, when did you learn Hindi? He goes, we've been here for 3 weeks. And I'm like, I've been coming here for 16 years. I just still don't know anything.
Incredible.
Chula, chula, go, go, go.
Right.
I just know a few words. And he
Right.
was speaking to this guy going, he goes, I don't know that many words. I go, you're having a conversation with him.
Wow.
But he said that once you learn that part of the brain, we didn't learn the way they teach us language in school. Because I took Spanish, and had to graduate. And I still.
Obligatory.
Yes. I know baños and,
Yeah.
cerveza and chino, all the important words. It's not like,
Yeah.
It's not like,
Oh,
you
I
retained
understand.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why when people go to immersion therapy, or they go to immersion language schools, it's different because your brain wants to go back to its original format. But when you challenge it, once it gets to a certain mass point, like I've known a lot of people because I was really curious about language learning, especially when I was in practice, because people would come to me, especially when I was in Arizona, they spoke Spanish, but they wanted to speak better English. But there was one guy that I remember working with, I write about him in my book, he could sing Spanish. He was like a Neil Diamond of the Spanish community, but he couldn't understand it and talk. But when he was younger, he could speak Spanish fluently because he came from, he was Mexican descent. But because he thought it made him sound stupid, his brain stopped it. But as soon as, and he would go on these interviews and he didn't understand because he sung Spanish. Why can't you speak Spanish? It's kind of like a lot of these artists that are Spanish speaking, but then they sound English, they perfect English when they're singing, but they don't understand what they're doing. They just memorize the words. So what I told him was, we just got to reactivate that system. You have to get to theta to do that. That's that subconscious we're talking about. If you want to change the programming on a computer, you can yell at the screen, you can hit the keyboards, but you're not going to change the programming till you get into the code.
Right.
That code is your subconscious. That's why when you downregulate, like either doing breath work like we were talking about, brain tap, or some way to get to that subconscious mind, you're not really going to make a change. And I'm not saying you can't heal yourself without it, but it's a longer road.
Sure.
And, there's no reason for all that suffering. And if you don't start sleeping, like I was talking about the person who was in the military, 30 years later still had the hematoma, because the brain will rewire around it. There's neuroplasticity, which means the brain is creating energy and neuron connections, and there's also neuropruning.
Well, that's why in our advanced imaging that we're doing on a brain MRI, we are measuring that part of the brain, and we can see those hematomas from years ago if, they had a brain injury. But the real question is, how is it affecting them today? So that's always the correlation that we have to make. I mean, it's one thing to show that we have a brain injury on an objective image, but how is it affecting them? And that's my analogy, is somebody could have a bullet in their brain lodged in there, but they're operating just fine because they've figured out how to get around.
Yeah, the brain will rewire around it.
Right.
It's like people who have a stroke. If the brain does its job, it's already replicated all that information. There's redundancy in the brain, just like we'd have redundancy. We'd have a backup system. So we have this kind of backup system. But some people, the traumatic injury is so bad that it didn't get a chance to do that, to offload it, or maybe they never took a chance to offload it or store it differently. But if somebody has a brain injury, and I know the region of the brain, I will tell you what brainwave has been function, and I can tell you how they're going to act.
Yep, exactly, because of what part of the lobe does control the part of the body. And if it's off, you'll just know.
Yeah, and it's like having your Wi-Fi's in the closet, and you say, like I said, the internet's down. It's not. Your router's down. So think your brain is like that router. It's the internet's still happening out there. Your thoughts are still out there. Your memories are still there. It's just you can't have access to them. But once you get blood flow and circulation back to that area, your brain will heal itself.
Perfect. So you mentioned there are breath work that you can do.
Yeah.
Can you explain
Yeah,
that?
so right now, today, without the brain tap, there's a morning breath. They call it a psychological sigh, or you can do something called breath of fire in the morning. And the reason you do the psychological sigh is very easy. You just take a deep breath in. You just keep doing it. Just sigh it out. And you do that for 3 or 4 minutes. And what that'll do is it'll trigger a brainwave called SMR, but it'll also create massive blood flow in the brain. Because as you breathe and you breathe in, and you can feel it. It'll kind of go. Yeah, it'll go in. And so as you're breathing, you're opening up those capillaries, and blood flow happens. With blood flow and circulation, that's what we need. And that's also going to trigger that brainwave, that SMR, that it gets damaged through TBIs.
Because we really don't breathe.
Oh no. Especially when you're stressed out.
Yes.
When
it's just little short breaths.
And those listening here, you'll probably notice today, or even people you're talking to, when you're talking to them, they'll hold their breath.
Yes.
And then they'll catch themselves. If you're doing that, which 99% of the people do before they start training their brain, if you do these 3 breath exercises for 21 days, I guarantee you'll do them forever, even if you have the brain tap, because there's going to be times when you're stressed out driving your car or doing something. And the second breath is one that's so good that the Navy SEALs get all the special forces get trained to do it. It's called the box breath. And in the middle of the day, you can use it, and you breathe into the count of 4, you hold it to the count of 4, you breathe out to the count of 4, you hold it out to the count of 4, and you can expand that number if your capacity, because the more oxygen you can get into the body, the faster the body's going to heal. So, but that box breath, if you do that, what'll happen is all that default mode network crap that's going on, you'll reboot your brain. And that's what needs to happen in the middle of the day. We used to take naps when we were kids, and then we said, I don't do naps. I still remember my granddaughter when she said, I don't take naps. So I started taking pictures of all the time she's passing out, in the middle of the afternoon because she's getting tired. I go, this is you not sleeping. This is you not sleeping. But, they'll try to force themselves to stay up.
I'm not sleeping.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we need that to replenish the energy in our brain. And then at night, this is the most important one. If you don't do the other 2 because you got busy or forgot about them, when you're laying in bed, you breathe into the count of 4. This is going to trigger that sympathetic system. So you might feel a little fear because you're holding your breath. But then as you breathe out, slowly do a body scan. And as you do that body scan, you'll notice the muscles unraveling. So think of your body like a capacitor or a charged circuit, and you're going to slowly discharge it. You want to slowly discharge it. And I tell people, most people go to sleep too quickly. They don't unwind the nervous system. So they go, I just hit the pillow and I go to sleep. That's not a good thing. You should take a moment to evaluate what your body's feeling. And some people can get to 3 or 4 breaths, then they're out. But if you slowly work up the body by visualizing the muscles, ligaments, and tendons relaxing as you breathe out. As you breathe in, you're going to face the fears of the day maybe, but eventually they're not going to be there anymore.
Right.
And you're just going to breathe out. And then what I tell people, once you get good at that, you'll start doing like a gratitude exercise. Like, what was so good about today? There could have been a lot of bad things that happened, and they do, but you want to start focusing on the positive. And, my conferences, I always tell people, the research shows being positive adds 10 years of positive living to your life.
Well, then I'm doing a good job because I'm always, not always, but I tend to be on that positive, optimistic, and I rarely get sick.
That's right. Yeah, because your psychoimmunology, your psychology affects your immune system. You have a thinking immune system. There's a reason why they run those commercials for allergy medicine on the Weather Channel. They've actually shown a 70% increase in sales because they show the spur, and people have a psychological reaction to it. It's not a physical reaction. I mean, some people it is physical, but most of the people, like, for instance, some people out there, if I mention milk to them, just say the word milk, their nose will start to run because most everybody's allergic to milk. And that's an overreaction of the immune system. And if you're wondering, how do I know I'm allergic to milk? In the morning before you eat anything else, water or anything, take a glass of milk and drink it. And if your nose starts to run like a baby does, when the babies, they start to give them milk, they go, they just got a little congestion. Well, you gave them congestion because you gave them milk. And we're not designed to drink milk. No. What is milk designed to do? It's take a small calf and make a cow in a year. So we're not designed. I mean, it tastes good, but it's not good for you.
Right.
And there's actually a website called Not Milk, and we're not here to talk about that, but it's not good for you.
I'm glad I never liked it.
Right. And the same thing's true with sugar. If you eat something with sugar, your body will start to have a reaction. Your body will tell you what you're reacting to, but we also have what's called nose blindness. Once we do it enough, the body starts saying, this is natural for you. I'm going to suppress this. Like you might not smell the nose. It's like living near a paper mill or having a train that runs by or living by an airport.
You don't even
People
hear
there, after a while, they go, I don't hear those airplanes anymore. Even though they're flying over, because the brain goes, that's not a danger anymore. I don't need to tell you every time an airplane flies over or a train goes by or the smell of the paper mill.
I wish that would work for my dog. With the UPS truck and the FedEx. Dang it.
Yeah, I think they're hardwired to chase brown trucks.
Anyway, well, we've touched on a lot, but one more I want to leave people with is Brain Tap can even improve your golf game.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're big in sports. Actually, our website, Brain Tap Sports, just going up where we work with a lot of UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, the Professional Fighters League. We have champions in all those leagues using Brain Tap.
Yes, and then Tom Brady. You got to touch on that
let's
one
show
too.
him,
Let's
show him a little.
So if you're watching this podcast, I'm putting on this, or I'm taking out the Brain Tap and showing it. So this is a cool device where we get lights from the ears as well. We can receive light
so
from the ears.
that light is actually flashing at different Auger frequencies, but it's too quick to see the flashing, but our brain will pick up the difference. So it's changing the frequency. And the red and blue light is actually feeding the brain energy. So when you put it on like that, and you put the visor down when you're playing it, and there's lights that happen there that either flash between 0.5 up to 88 pulses per second, depending upon the brainwave we want to train. So while you're wearing it, you just put that on, close your eyes. That's all you need to do. And remember to breathe.
That's it.
Yep. You don't have to think about anything else. It'll instruct you, and your brain will go through it, and you'll go through the process. It'll even bring you back. That's the nice thing, because people get afraid, I'm not going to come back.
Oh, it does every time. I fall asleep pretty much every time I put it on, and then it brings me back. And then if I need to go back to sleep, I just literally take it off my head and go to sleep.
Yep.
And then if I need it for a power nap in the day, if you will, it recharges my brain. It feels like I tell people I got a 3-hour nap in 20 minutes.
Right.
That's what it feels like.
And you'll share in the show notes the link that you can give them so they can try it for 14 days for free.
Yes.
Not the headset, but they can try the app so they can learn about it. It won't have the light part of it, but you'll have the sound part of it. And like that study I was talking about with the coal miners, we improved their sleep by 70% in 3 weeks. With the app alone, it took 6 weeks, but it still happened. It takes a little more time, because light energy, we need energy in our brain. We've all heard the expression, my kids are too tired to sleep. Mm-hmm. Most adults are too tired to sleep. Mm-hmm. So we need to give energy in the brain, but it's not energy in the form of sugar. It's energy in the form of ATP, and light energy helps convert that production. It bypasses the digestive system, so it goes right to the source and starts to produce that energy.
And what's so cool is he has a product called Neural Check, and it measures your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, and it will show, and we've been doing it here at this conference, that in one session we can improve that parasympathetic nervous system.
Right. Yeah, the study we presented to the NIH and is on our website too, that they can read. We showed with 100 people. Now that's up to 500, and the statistics still stay the same. But the one we published was 100 people, 33% neurological improvement in one session. And when they did brain tap for at least a minimum of 3 times a week. Now you can listen up to 3 times a day, but 3 times a week, because we wanted to say if people were not doing it, but every 72 hours, that became their new baseline, which meant now they're waking up 32% better 1 month from now. Then they're sleeping better, and those improvements are happening.
Wow. And, of course, we all want to know, why is Tom Brady using it? What is he?
Well, for recovery.
Yeah.
And
he's the one that said for every minute of exertion, you need 2 hours of recovery. So now he's out there sharing brain tap, right?
Yeah.
Like he's telling everybody, you got to use this.
And his team, the TBRX team, Alex Guerra and Peter Cummings, when they train their PTs, like whether it be Tampa Bay or the Oakland Raiders or whoever they're working with, if you want to work with TBRX, you got to have a brain tap.
Wow.
Because it's so they know that recovery, and people just aren't going to take the time. We don't have the time to learn to meditate.
Right.
So you don't have to learn to meditate. In fact, it's not exactly the same as meditating, because there's a lot of meditation practices.
Right.
But this is one that puts your brain into the healing state, just like you're in meditation. So think of it like you're getting the physiological benefits, but you don't have to have any of the psychological training or any of the learning.
That's a great way to put it. I thought of it. So you have this in multiple medical facilities, and this is chiropractors that are putting it in their facilities, wellness clinics, and there's a whole program that they can even bill for this, correct?
Right. Yeah, functional doctors. We have doctors that are working with remote work with patients because of what happened with COVID, so they're working from home. This is a device that they can use at home, and they can monitor it with their doctor. Right. So there's, our clinical uses, it's the creativity of the doctor. I mean, they know how to use it. They know the treatment plans. But then this becomes an at-home program because it's affordable. Sure. And the whole family can use it. Yes. So while, whether it's your golf game like you're saying, or basketball or football, I mean, we have a lot of sports ones because we have a lot of athletes using it. We had a lot of Olympic athletes using it. So as you think about it, it's all about how quickly you recover. Yeah. When you're working out, especially like these pro athletes, you're stressing your body out to the max to
Yeah.
try to push as much out of it as you can.
Yeah.
So the quicker you can recover, the quicker it rebuilds. And our body learns and builds through stress. But if we keep stressing out, it'll burn out. So that's why the recovery is so important. When somebody says, how was he a pro quarterback at the highest level at 44 years old? Better than, the 26-year-olds, is because he recovered.
He knows how to recover.
And he might not look like the most physical, look good,
Sure.
of course. The
Sure.
women won't argue with that, but he didn't look like he was, like if you looked at him without a shirt on, you wouldn't think that's the world's
Right.
greatest quarterback who ever lived.
Right. Yeah.
But he knew how to recover.
Right.
And he didn't have the injuries. He only had like one season where he was out,
Yeah.
So other than that, that's a pretty good run
Absolutely.
in the NFL.
Well, whole body, whole brain fitness is what you have right here. And thanks to your amazing mind and creation, I am so grateful for that. It really transformed my life back in 2019 when I discovered it. And now I just enjoy sharing it with anybody that I come across, especially in the world of work that I'm in. And here we are at one of the best events of the year, I would say, Dr. Fab, who invited us out to be here. And so I just appreciate you being here, what you've done for this world, and what you're continuing to do. And really just the motto is we're bettering a billion brains.
That's right. Yep. We're on a mission to better a billion brains, and if you're watching, your brain's on the line right now. So we want you. So download the app, use it for yourself. 90% of the people, by the way, we did a study just by downloading the app. We did this in Vegas one time with the doctors. They had, when we recorded their sleep for the one night, they had their best night's sleep even in a hotel room. 90% of them.
Wow, that's
so
a study.
you can even gauge your own sleep tonight.
Yes.
You download it after watching this. Listen to it before you go to bed. Get that delta going. Get that level 4 sleep. Get your brain detoxing, and then it's just going to get better from there.
Yeah, and I always say this, pun intended.
Yes.
It's a no-brainer.
That's right. Right.
Please, you don't even have to use your brain to use this product, and you will do yourself and your family, all those that know you, a service. And the app actually allows you to have it on 2 devices.
Right.
So you could have it and your child can have it. And then you can just use your own earbuds. I definitely recommend if you can't afford to get the headset. I believe you're also even doing financing now for the headset.
Yeah, they can go online. There's 3 different sources, and it's a very small amount every month that you can get, and you can get the whole thing for
Super affordable. A therapist, a family therapist, or even a psychologist does cost a lot of money.
Oh, it's way less than that because I was a psychologist.
Yes, so you know.
Yeah. When people pay me $200 an hour, they could buy a lot of brain taps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So definitely do yourself a favor and get yourself one today, and start learning and start really getting your brain into fitness again.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you,
Okay.
Patrick.
Well, thanks for having
being
me.
with us.
Yeah, it's great seeing you again.
All right. You too, always.
Okay. Good luck.